Hi, welcome back to BizJet TV. It's Fab Poli here today, and we're going to be talking about BizJet news. 3 items to talk about today, and we're going to launch straight into some interesting news. As you probably saw recent episode, we talked about Eviation Alice, which is the electric aeroplane being built by the Israeli company. They've got some good news as some Singapore investors knocked on the door, and the Claremont Group have bought into the company and bought actually 70% of the shares, plugged a lot of cash in there to develop this aeroplane and take it to market. So it's good news for Eviation. If you haven't already seen the video on the Eviation Alice, click on the link above and you'll learn all about this electric aeroplane. Next piece of news is sad news again. Another crash, another Citation. A Citation XL this time was going into Agar in India, and it clipped some electric cables and crashed. But the good thing is that all 6 occupants, the 4 passengers and the 2 pilots, managed to walk away without even being injured, which is good news. Now, what happened on this one, or my evaluation, as reading around what happened here and making some phone calls, basically what happened is there was a NOTAM, which is a notice to airmen, which was out warning about these cables on the approach. So the pilots should have briefed each other on these cables, knowing that they're below the glide path. That's one thing that you always have to check as a pilot before a flight, the notice to airmen. The next thing you check is the weather, and the third thing you check is the load sheet. See how many people you're going to have on board, how much cargo you're carrying, and then you have to make a decision on how much fuel to carry. Now, what probably happened here, this was a positioning flight, so they were flying in to do some maintenance. So they're probably just all staff on board, and what I imagine the pilots did is they probably went below the glide path to try and land short. It's a 1100 meter runway, so it's long enough, so they probably weren't carrying much fuel, so it's long enough for them to land, but they're probably trying to be clever and land short, and so they went below the glide path, completely ignoring the NOTAM about the cables, and they clipped the cables and consequently, boom, crashed the aeroplane. So unfortunately the aeroplane's a write-off, but again, you know, it is pilot error. At least that's my take on it. I may be completely wrong on this one, as I said last week, but you can quite see, I mean, if you're clipping cables, I mean, it's either the cables were invading the glide path, which could be, it may be the case, or the cables were there and they were below the glide path, and the pilots went below the glide path. So it's one of the two. I think it's probably the pilots trying to be clever, because, you know, a lot of accidents do happen on empty legs. Pilots tend to play around with the airplane, do experiments and things like that, but you know, you have to always stay safe as a pilot, whether you've got passengers or not on board, and don't try any funny games and that. If you want to do experiments and that, I suggest doing them in the flight simulator, not on the aeroplane, because you know, you crash the simulator, it's just a computer, you reset and off you go again. But you crash an airplane, you know, it's millions and millions of dollars of damage, and you could even kill somebody at the same time. Next piece of news is some really good news for the private jet industry. Private jet sales this year in 2019 are up by 12.5%. Yes, that's really good news. And we've got the most sold aircraft this year is the Citation Latitude, 27 aircraft, followed by the Phenom 300, which is an Embraer product. They've sold 21 aircraft, and then the Honda Jet with 17 aircraft. If we look at the manufacturers, top manufacturer for this year in sales is Cessna with 90 aircraft, followed by Gulfstream with 65 aircraft. But the interesting thing about Gulfstream, they have had a sales increase of 25%. So good on Gulfstream. That's probably the G500 and the G600 deliveries happening there, which is why we're up by 25% for the Gulfstream people. And Bombardier sitting at number 3 with 35 units sold, an increase in 3%. Compared to last year. So it's all good news there for the private jet industry, with, you know, numbers up at 12.5%. These of course are all numbers based off of new aircraft sales. It's not the pre-owned market, even though the pre-owned market is moving well as well. So more and more people are taking to the skies in the private jets, as they are realizing that the private jet is a business tool. And this is really the purpose here of BizJet TV. Well, I hope you enjoyed this piece of news. I hope you enjoyed this episode of BizJet TV. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, I encourage you to subscribe to BizJet TV, like this video, share this video, comment below, and I'll see you on the next one.